Thanks for tuning in. This is the Overdrive Digital Podcast. My aim for this is to find the most interesting people and stories within the digital marketing space and share them via the podcast. If you like what you hear, please do come and check us out at overdrivedigital.co.uk. You can subscribe to this podcast via iTunes, Spotify and SoundCloud. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Overdrive Digital Podcast. We're in Brighton for Brighton SEO, and yesterday was the first paid social show, which I believe is the first ever dedicated day conference to paid social, which was amazing. As part of that, I had the pleasure of sharing a session with Susan Wenograd, VP of Digital Marketing Strategy at Aimclear.
Got it.
And she's been kind enough to join me this morning for a chat. Hey, Susan.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm pretty good, actually. I'm pretty good.
Good.
The sun's shining.
Yeah, and you don't have jet lag.
I don't have jet lag, no. And I was sensible last night, for once. Cool. So, no, thanks so much for joining me. Also, big shout out to Byron, who joined us on the session yesterday. And, man, what a day.
I know. It was a whirlwind. It was amazing, though. It was such good topics, such good speakers. I wished it was more than one day.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, it was great.
Loved it. So, obviously, kind of want to dive into kind of asking a few questions around Facebook ads and that kind of thing, but for those who don't know your background, it'd be great to kind of hear how you got into Facebook ads and kind of a little bit about your journey to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually started in e-commerce, so I still have a great affinity for e-commerce brands. But I started off as a content writer, actually. So I didn't really know much about marketing. This was in the early 2000s. I didn't know much about how even web pages were built. I was just a good writer. And so I actually started at a huge e-commerce retailer in the US that has since gone out of business called Circuit City. So I worked on their e-commerce site, and that was where I started to learn how email marketing worked. And I worked for the email marketing team and retention tactics and page analytics and all that kind of stuff started. So that was where I initially started, and I really enjoyed the advertising side of it. And I had a freelance client that asked me, do you know anything about those ads that show up in Google? And I didn't, but I said I'd be happy to learn. I wouldn't charge them in case I screwed anything up, so I could just learn with their money. So I learned Google ads really quickly, and they made a lot of sense to me because I started as a writer. So I really liked the interplay of the words and then the metrics. So I actually started in paid search, and I did that. I started that in about 2005-ish, 2006-ish. And that was really my specialty. That was actually what I started speaking on initially. I never really got into the organic side much because it mystified me. And I'm an impatient person. And I was like, I can't wait 5 months for something to rank. I'll die. So I stuck with paid search for a really long time. But I did a lot of other marketing in some of the roles that I had, where I learned programmatic display. When I worked in-house, I did more email marketing, content marketing. So I kind of got exposed to everything, but paid was just always what came most natural to me. So in 2013-ish, I was working in-house at a home decor retailer, and they wanted to try Facebook ads. And I really didn't know a whole lot about them at the time. But I kind of had a budget to play with, and it was I'll just start learning. So
amazing.
That was how I started learning. And then I really enjoyed it because I liked the creativity of it. I liked that it got me more back into creative writing and kind of that real, the stuff that marketers love.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's it felt like real marketing.
It's so much closer to, genuine creative marketing than... Google Ads is great, but it's very much more run by the numbers almost.
It is, yeah. That's very true. And so I liked the experimentation factor in Facebook, and that was before they even had all the ad units they have today. So I just ended up loving it more and more because they kept rolling out cooler stuff. I'm like, ooh, Canvas ads. Oh my gosh. I loved all the different stuff they had. So I just got more into it, and a lot of my speaking was on the search circuit. And I just kind of got tired about talking about paid search, and I kind of felt like I was just talking about the same stuff over and over because it was becoming a mature industry and there weren't as many changes. And so one year I was just like, I'm just gonna pitch Facebook ads. It has nothing to do with search, but maybe they'd be interested in having it. And I was shocked that it was accepted. And So I started speaking about that. And then as soon as I did, like all these other conferences started reaching out, asking me to do it because nobody else was really pitching it. And I enjoyed talking about it more. And there was a humongous need because people were like, I don't get how this works. And I know you and I were talking yesterday about how it's really hard to go from paid search to Facebook ads.
Totally different mindset.
It's completely different.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That was the other part, is I was getting a lot of PPC people that were like, I hate it. It doesn't work the same way. It doesn't work at all. Like, they just didn't understand how all of it worked. And Facebook didn't do a great job of explaining it at the time.
Yep.
So that was how I started speaking about it. And I still do a lot of other types of advertising. Like, I do LinkedIn, I still do paid search, but I just kind of became known as this Facebook person. So it's like I still poke around in it the most, probably. But I feel like a good 30% of what I poke around and play with is just to get learnings to share. It's like not necessarily because it's anything, you know.
And I think the fun thing I find about the platform is there are always new things to try and test and learn from, and you know, it
for better or for worse.
For better or for worse, indeed, yeah, absolutely. So your role now at Aimclear, and I think this was as of yesterday, VP of Digital Marketing Strategy, right?
Yeah.
So it must be amazing working at Aimclear with Marty. Right?
It is. It's a blast. I mean, it's
pretty cool.
Yeah. The thing that I love is that he really does encourage you to just like try crazy stuff. You know, he's like, it might work. And it's never to the detriment of performance or anything, but it's just always like, hey, I saw this thing I want to try, or ooh, what if we did it that way? Or we have an amazing development team that can create like any report or any analysis you need. So the other nice part is to have that kind of workhorse in-house to validate what you want to test or what you're trying is fantastic. So you have like all the tools you need to do smart testing. And
an amazing designer, because your slides yesterday looked.
I have to give a shout out to our CMO, Manny. Manny is the one that does those. He's like
so good.
Has this amazing hidden skill of like PowerPoint animation. It's like he's so good at it, and I never knew until he's like, hey, I'll help you with your slides. I said, okay. And I got back this deck and I was like, holy crap, how did you do all this?
It was so good.
I can't touch it because I'll break it. Like I won't edit it because I'll never figure out how he got these things to animate that way.
Amazing. And like one of the questions I was going to ask you was, I read a short series of blog posts that you wrote, I think maybe a year ago. And it was all about your kind of take on kind of inheriting an account.
Yes.
And I think you did 3.
Yeah, it was the one
posts.
about the CPA problem.
Yeah. And I loved it because it was a real kind of step-by-step walkthrough of, right, here's the situation, here's the problem. And it was, it was so in tune with just a genuine experience of picking up an account. So, I guess when you're taking on accounts, small or large, like what are the types of mistakes you're seeing happen most frequently?
Yeah, so it depends on whether it's been managed by the business owner themselves, or if it's been managed by an agency. Yeah. And so I tend to see like camps of problems that are very clearly tied to one or the other. A lot of times if it's something where an owner has run it, they've just kind of done like 2 or 3 things that seem to work and they stuck with it, and they can be very nervous about trying, like they know they need to scale, but they're like really afraid to do anything out of the box.
Yep.
So I run into that a lot. So it's kind of like, you know, they've maxed out their, you know, optimized to purchase based on lookalikes. You know, it's like all the kind of the basic stuff has been done. From the agency side, usually what I see is they kind of do that same thing where it's like they stick with like low-hanging fruit, but they really miss some best practices that are what help accounts scale. So like they don't understand funnel building really. Like they'll just like create page post campaigns that don't really have a good content strategy, and then they'll try and remarket them and it doesn't work, or they don't understand creative. So like they'll do videos that don't work, and then they try and do video retargeting. So it's like they don't know how to make all the pieces fit together. Yeah,
that makes sense. I guess it's, and with like Facebook ads changing so much, I guess the problems that you encounter change with that, right?
Yes.
So, you know, like we were talking again, like when we were having that chat last night about how PPC and Facebook ads are so different. You can always tell when an account's been set up by someone who's just done Google Ads.
Yes.
And it's such a different mindset.
Yeah. That's the other thing I see is like if it's a primarily paid search agency that tried to take on Facebook, it's always like a bunch of different campaigns that have granular ad sets that actually have a ton of overlap. So they'll have like 5 different ad sets that technically target, 5 different interests, but they're so closely related that the same users are populating all of those ad sets. It's like, and they try and control bids. So like they put bid caps on, and it's like it's all that kind of stuff.
You just can't really go that granular, can you?
You can't.
One of the one of the things that I've personally seen change quite a bit over the last, say, 18 months with Facebook ads is, I think it's that exact thing of, you could go quite a bit more granular or layered with your targeting and be a bit more specific, whereas now we're seeing far better results from going broader.
Mm-hmm.
So, the pixel is so good.
Yeah.
Giving the pixel, I guess the idea is you give the pixel as much information as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And you allow it to do its job properly.
Exactly.
Is that kind of in tune with what you're saying?
Yeah, and that's actually what Aimclear has seen too. Back in the day, one of the things that Marty was a very great evangelist for were those very specific targeting layers that Facebook had, and they did work great because once upon a time they didn't have lookalikes, and when lookalikes first came out, they sucked. I mean, they just didn't do very well that whole first year. So we kind of had to do it that way, but now more and more, we're finding that, like you said, the pixel's gotten smart enough, and it has so much data that we don't, that there's assumptions we make as marketers about like what interests matter, or what things matter to a brand. And a lot of times there's like these really weird patterns that we would never personally see that are persistent throughout the people that are going to buy, that are not obvious to a marketer. So we can never pick up on that stuff. Yeah.
It's like we ran an experiment a while back with 2 ad sets, and one had targeting in and one had no targeting in.
Yep.
And the one with no targeting had half the CPA.
Yeah.
And it's just...
Yeah.
That is good. Right?
Yeah,
That's seriously cool.
Yeah, and it's hard because I think there's still that propensity for marketers to want to hang on tight. And it also makes it difficult too, because I think as marketers, we really do want to tailor creative to the personalities we're speaking to. And you can't really do that as much when it's that broad. So that's the other thing that's tough.
And it's kind of, it's just natural, common sense. Like, as a marketer, you know who your audience are. Mm-hmm. So if you're starting Facebook ads, it's kind of almost common sense, isn't it, to set your own targeting up, when actually...
Yep. Facebook knows better than you,
sometimes
technically.
They do, yeah. I mean, they've got more data, haven't they?
Yeah, they do, yeah.
Okay, so one of the other topics that you were looking at yesterday in your presentation was Facebook analytics, and I got the impression that within... the 20-minute presentation, you're really only scratching the surface of what it's capable of. So, as a bit of a run through, how do you use it? What sort of insights do you gain? It's a genuinely interesting, but I think for some people confusing topic.
Yeah, and it's not. I mean, it's a confusing platform. It's really not.
True.
It's not user friendly. It's like I showed on my slide. When you log in, you're like, this is a disaster. Like, I don't even know where to start. The thing that I like about Facebook Analytics is I feel like it really closes that gap that has existed for a while between what people do on Facebook and then what clients are seeing in Google Analytics. Because more and more people don't leave Facebook, they stay on it, and it's been that way for years. Same thing with Instagram. And there's not really... There was always just kind of this black hole of like, I know people are watching my videos, I know that they're interacting with my posts, but like... None of that translates to anything on the Google Analytics side because nothing is measured till they come to the site.
Yep.
And so analytics, Facebook Analytics, I think, does a good job at going towards helping put some color into like what's happening in between those two things.
Yeah.
They don't do a great job of explaining that it does that and how to do it. But the 2 things I highlighted yesterday that I think are the most useful for any marketer is the funnels function. So. You can literally just say, if this person did this, how many people went on to do this? So like the example I gave was people that commented on a post, how many wound up purchasing?
Yeah, smart.
Yeah, and it's like, and it helps put some context around like, does the social interaction matter? Should you be spending time on that as a brand? And for some brands, the answer might be no. I mean, it's not always a yes. But it starts to connect those dots for you as far as like, what do these people do? It also helps you see not just, Facebook forward as far as what they do after, but also if they came to your site some other way, what are they then doing on Facebook? So creating audiences based on like the referral source, like if they came from LinkedIn or if they came from YouTube, like you can pull those in as filters to see how do these people behave differently? And you may save yourself a ton of work to be like, hey, people that come from LinkedIn, like they don't comment, they don't care, so we don't need to bother with engagement for them. Or, it's like it can help you start making those really high funnel decisions that save you a lot of work later.
Yeah, and I think that the potential of that is huge, isn't it? And the example that you're using around, if someone comments, are they more likely to purchase? And I think the example you gave, the conversion rate was fair, kind of significantly higher than for people who didn't comment.
Yes.
Or it was higher than the average, right?
Yes, it was higher than the average.
Yeah, so the impression I got was you're using that Facebook analytics to get insight into what you should be doing next. So it's not necessarily like a direct attribution tool.
Correct.
It's, okay, if that's happening, and again, your example was, right, I know the conversion rate is better if people comment and interact with my posts.
Yep.
Therefore, put some money on the engagement campaign.
Exactly.
And then the results you were showing was that had a pretty significant increase in revenue.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's looking for those opportunities. I find it's, if you're a small account, it's not something you have to worry about as much because you can still kind of rely on like conversion focused, lookalikes based on, low funnel intent.
Yep.
But there's so many brands now that either that's not working for them anymore, so they need cheaper top of funnel.
Yep.
Or there's also brands where they're like, okay, we've maxed out the low-hanging fruit, but we don't know how to scale higher. Yep. That's really where I find analytics values, figuring out, like, what is that? Where should you start driving more top of funnel, Because
I think, scale is another point that people get stuck on because you can't just turn it up.
Yeah.
Right? Particularly if you've got 1% lookalikes. There's only going to be a certain shelf life on that.
Especially if you're optimizing to something low funnel like purchase. I mean, the subset of those people that are going to complete it is so small. It's just Facebook will find them, but it's going to get expensive and there's not a lot of them.
Yeah. And I guess taking this approach to Facebook analytics, you get a real steer on, okay, if we need to grow, like this is where we can go, right?
Exactly. It kind of helps you highlight where you shine, because there's been some where it's like they just don't get a lot of social interaction.
Yeah.
And there's no discernible difference.
Yeah.
So for them, we're like, all right, we don't want to bother with engagement campaigns. Maybe we should test video view campaigns or, something. But at least you know where not to put effort.
Yep. Makes total sense.
Yeah.
So how do you think, like, where are things going to go? So we've got the campaign budget optimization change coming up.
Yeah.
It feels like in terms of ad formats, at least, things have slowed down a little bit in terms of new features.
Yeah.
So where do you think Facebook's going to go over the next 12 months? That's a massive open-ended question, right?
No, I think that Instagram's really their biggest play at this point. I mean, the problem that they have on the Facebook side, and they've said this, is that they are not going to be able to create supply that's going to make the news feed any larger. I mean, it just, anything that they have rolled out has been kind of supplemental pocket strategies and some of them work. Like I've had marketplace ads do amazing because they're so cheap. I've gotten fantastic return on them, but I can't scale them. I can't be like, only show this in marketplace ads. I have to choose the news feed.
Yeah.
So there's some functions there that I feel like they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot because when they have these placements that work that we want to scale, but they require, like, you try and uncheck everything. It's like, nah, you got to run in the news feed to run that. I'm like, I actually don't want your newsfeed inventory. Like, I want you to keep that. I want the other stuff.
Yeah.
So there's some laziness there that I think has also poached, some inventory they could otherwise get back.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they're going to be able to scale the way they were hoping with Facebook Watch. I think that was kind of where they were putting their chips. And I think it hasn't done what they wanted. And it's just not, Facebook just isn't conducive to a long format video thing. I think if they made a separate platform for it, it might actually do better.
But then they've got IGTV, which hasn't yet been put out as an ad placement, right? So you can't run ads on it
not yet. Yeah.
So I guess that's an option, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be their better bet versus Facebook Watch.
Yeah. Well, people are using it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the thing. It's like, that's a better start. No one's using Facebook Watch. So, but I think the other thing is, too, it's like, like you mentioned, their ad format types are slowing down because I just don't think that there's as much point in putting out new ones. Because if they don't have any more inventory, giving people more options there isn't necessarily going to make any difference.
Also, some of the old basic ones work best.
I know.
Like single image or a carousel.
Yeah, I still have carousels kill it in e-com. Like, they still do great. And so, as much as the instant experiences and stuff can work well, but like they're a lot more hit or miss. There's just some old reliables that still do great, you know? And I still think they have that growth potential on the Instagram side. Like they're definitely seeing it with stories starting to take off. Like there's just a lot of stuff that hasn't been done there yet. And I think the other piece too is that the demographic over there is changing. So the other problem they had initially was, you know, it was kind of like Instagram had like the Snapchat reputation where they're like, no one has any money. They're all younger. And like someone had presented yesterday, we're actually seeing a migration of, you know, 35, 40 plus moving over to Instagram. So you're starting to see disposable income move over there in a scalable audience size. So I think that's going to change it.
We get great results on Instagram with kind of, you know, 30 plus, you know, whereas maybe a year, 2 years ago, that probably wasn't a thing, maybe necessarily. So it's all changing. But then on Facebook, we're getting great results from, you know, 40, 50 plus.
Yes, agree. Totally agree.
It's just everyone's going to move around, aren't they?
Yeah, so, totally.
The other thing I wish they'd do is just make it a little bit more reliable.
Yeah. Like not go down 2 days before Black Friday with all of the reps having out of office messages. How stressful was that? I was lucky because this was the first year in like, I don't even know. This is the first year in probably 8 or 9 years where I did not have a client that was doing Black Friday stuff. It was like the first year I was able to take Thanksgiving weekend in the States and just have my Thanksgiving weekend.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Like, I was just like, and I was of all years, lightning struck because I was like, I finally got a weekend off and it was when Facebook decided not to work.
I think the stars lined up there.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, the thing that's so tough is, like David Herman, who I love. I don't know if you follow him on Twitter. He's amazing. Right. Okay. And he, like, it's just become this running joke among a bunch of us that we're like, David's going to have an aneurysm because he gets so angry. But all of his points are so well taken. Like, he's just like, how can a platform that makes this much money just decide to not work? I mean, for hours and days at a time and not refund money. And that's the other problem is that eventually there is going to be some other ad platform that's going to rise up. It's, you know, the problem is right now it's Instagram, which is still owned by them. Yeah. But there's going to be, you know, further diversification. I mean, as Facebook stays too expensive and as most people can't really think higher funnel, they're like, oh, it's not working. I'm going to move my money. So we've seen it happen with Google Ads where there are people that took away paid search spend and moved it to something like Facebook because in some industries it just got too expensive. Yep. So until that starts happening, Facebook has no impetus to fix it or be more reliable. That's the problem.
It's just part of the game, isn't
it?
Like you have to accept
Lucky
the fact
us.
that...
You have to accept the fact they suck, and
but when it works, it works.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like they keep coming back from. It's like the slot machine at a casino. You know, you're kind of like, maybe today the money won't come out, but when it does, I hit the jackpot, and so much comes out.
Got to be in it to win it.
Yep.
So I guess to wrap up, one of the kind of big changes that's coming up is default campaign budget optimization.
Yes.
So it's September that's rolling out.
Yes.
And you know, I would love to hear your thoughts on how you feel advertisers need to prepare for that, how people should be testing ahead of it, what it means for account structure. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So this is one of those areas where I'm like, having been a paid search person might actually be helpful.
That's a really good point.
Because I feel like even in my own testing and then what I've read from other people, it's like 50-50 if it works better or not. I mean, it really... is divided. I'm not seeing anybody saying this is terrible, but I'm not seeing anybody say this is great. They're like, it's great for some accounts and it's terrible for others. Yep. So, you know, I think, you know, Facebook's advice, which I was just reading this week, was to have 50 conversions per campaign instead of per ad set.
So per campaign, not per ad set.
Correct. Right. Yeah. So it's nice because it's a little more attainable. I still question if that's enough data for it to make a decision that quickly as far as how to allocate the budget. And the thing that I run into being a top of funnel-eyed person is that a lot of times what I have to have Facebook optimize for at the top of the funnel isn't necessarily what's going to get me the best results at the bottom of it. So like, for example, let's say I have like, you know, 4 different ad sets running in a campaign budget optimized situation. And let's say they're video views, right? Yep. It's going to optimize towards the one getting the longest views, but I might find when I retarget that the one that actually sells the best is the one that gets, you know, less, people don't watch for as long, or, you know, it's a different video. So there's a mechanism there as far as like the creative that's running. Like there's other factors that are going to determine the success versus just what you're seeing on the front end. So that's my biggest concern with it, is that it's like, it's doing its job. You know what I mean? I'm like, it's not swindling people. Like it's doing what it's supposed to do, but it's not taking into account that those audiences you're creating go on to do other things, which are ultimately where you're going to be judging your spend on.
Yeah, it's a really interesting mix of kind of human input and automation, isn't it?
Yes.
Because as we were talking about earlier, the Pixel's so good.
Yeah.
When it's doing the job, it's great. However, like I still want a certain degree of control.
Yeah.
You know, so if we've got a retargeting campaign, we've got different time windows. I know I want to spend more money on day 1 than day 7 because my returns are going to be better. And then I might want to kind of pump the spend up like 3 days after that to pull people back in. And that's me as an advertiser making a decision on how to distribute the spend.
Yeah.
So, not being able to do that at that level means a complete, I guess it's a structural, it's a logistical change.
It is. It really is. I mean, I feel like it has merit if you're like, okay, I'm going to test, 4 different ad sets with 4 completely different interests, and they're all optimized to add to cart or, purchase or something low funnel. I feel like there's merit in using it because you're just like, I don't really care who wins. I just need the sales, know? I think where it gets dicey is when it's like, you're running it as the first step in a multi-step funnel. It doesn't have the knowledge of the journey that you're actually ultimately optimizing for. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's just another step to probably making it harder for new advertisers or small accounts without the volume for Facebook to optimize for.
Yeah.
It's just going to make it that bit harder for people to get started, which
Agree.
I think is a shame.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always been intimidating, I think, to small businesses when they log in and the first thing they have to do is pick an objective because they're like, well, I want sales. So, it's like, that's like the downward spiral. Like they pick conversions because they're like, what do you want? You're like, well, I want conversions, not realizing it's going to be like an $18 CPM and you have to have, 30 to 50 conversions for it to work. And there's all these, this works if, and then there's like this long disclaimer that they should have that is not there, So I'm like, it already is baffling to business owners when they try and set it up because they're like, well, do I want traffic? I don't know. I think I want conversions, but maybe I want traffic. Like it's so overwhelming to begin with that now you're doing it where you're like, hey, and we're just going to take your money and we'll decide for you.
I guess they make it so easy for a new advertiser to come in and spend money, but it's so difficult for small accounts are way harder than big accounts.
Oh my gosh, I totally agree.
Because you have no time to learn.
No, you have no time to learn, and the incoming data is so sporadic. It's like if you're trying to optimize for something like purchase, like you might have 8 one day and 3 the next. And it's so like up and down that you can't, there's no consistency. It's like you have to wait, 60 days to have any kind of like data sample that tells you anything. Yeah. And Facebook struggles. I mean, they're just like, I don't know, like some days it wins. It's the jackpot thing, right? Like some days it wins and some days it's terrible. And you're like, it was terrible today. Should I cut it off? Did it just have a bad day? It's like, there's just, I find
stressful.
I find the small accounts a lot harder for that reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, to kind of end this chat. So for small advertisers, people new to Facebook ads, where do you recommend they go and look for decent, solid advice before they spend any money? Like, where should they go to learn?
Yeah.
Apart from following you, obviously.
God, please. I usually recommend anything put out by Andrew Foxwell and John Loomer.
Yep.
Is really, really great beginner information because they're one of the few, I feel like, that go through it step by step and really take you through like the interface and what these things mean and how they work together. So I would say, any training that John Loomer and Andrew Foxwell put out is worth its weight in gold. And then podcast wise, and even I'm sure course wise, I've never taken any of his courses, but I really love Rick Mulready's Art of Paid Traffic.
Yeah.
It's so great. It's just, and it's very applicable to small businesses. Like, I don't ever feel like he has people on where you're like, well, I don't have that kind of budget, so I can't do that. He has a lot of like local small businesses on that are getting success with the stuff he's taught them. And I even as someone that manages accounts, I still love hearing about that. Like I still love hearing like the really creative little ways they came up with to make stuff work. That's another really good one.
Yeah, he's so good. I think, that's really useful advice. And there's, it's going to those guys and getting the information is going to, I think, get you a better start.
Absolutely.
And to me, it's worth investing a bit of time,
I'm
bit
like,
of money.
because the thing is, too, is they're very unbiased. Like, they do Facebook every day, but they're not saying it's the greatest thing ever and there's no flaws. Like, they will tell you what the flaws are and what to look out for, which I think is the hardest part.
Yeah, perfect. And yeah, so where can people find you if they want to know a little bit more?
I'm on Twitter like all the time.
Yeah.
So you can find me there at Susan Edub. That's usually the best way to reach me, and then you can DM me or just give me a shout on there. That's usually the quickest response you'll get.
Fantastic, and thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great to chat.
You too.